Now that Donald Trump is losing many of his cases in court, his supporters are attacking the judges. Some individuals have even made violent threats against judges and their families. Trump received a rare public rebuke from Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts after calling for the impeachment of a federal judge who ruled against his administration. Think about that for a moment, disagreeing with a judge's decision and responding by calling for their impeachment. What about appealing the decision instead? As you scroll through Twitter, seeing Trump's usual complaints about judges being unfair, something unexpected happens. Chief Justice John Roberts, typically reserved, decides he has had enough. Roberts, who rarely speaks out, made it clear that judges should not be impeached simply because the president does not like their rulings. His statement emphasized that disagreements over legal decisions should be handled through the appeals process, not through political retaliation. Chief Justice Roberts stated, "We don't deal with a disagreement over the law by impeaching the judge. We appeal the case. People are free to express their opinions, and they can criticize the Supreme Court if they question its legitimacy. The court has always ruled on controversial cases, and its decisions have always faced intense criticism. That is a normal part of the judicial process." Roberts, known for being reserved and neutral, has rarely engaged in political disputes. His decision to respond to Trump's remarks was significant. It came on the same day Trump explicitly called for the impeachment of a judge who had ruled against his administration. Roberts has built a reputation for being composed and impartial. Throughout Trump's presidency, he avoided responding to personal attacks on the judiciary. However, when Judge James Boasberg ruled against Trump's attempt to use the Alien Enemies Act, Trump did not just express disagreement, he called for the judge's impeachment. Judge Boasberg had issued a temporary restraining order to allow for more legal arguments to be heard. The president has now said he will use the Alien Enemies Act against gangs, not only to remove them but to send them to a prison in El Salvador, where, frankly, they are doomed. It has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement over a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. This is basically like losing at Monopoly and demanding the banker be fired. That's not how any of this works. But Trump has never been particularly concerned with understanding how things actually work. When Chief Justice Roberts, a man who usually has all the personality of a manila folder, actually spoke up. His statement was the judicial equivalent of a librarian suddenly screaming in the reference section. People in Washington nearly spilled their overpriced lattes when they heard it. Roberts essentially explained that when you disagree with a judge, you don't try to get them fired, you file an appeal, like any normal, functioning adult. The fact that someone as reserved as Roberts finally showed emotion proves that Trump has pushed the judicial system to its absolute breaking point. What makes this even more surprising is that Roberts made this statement fully aware that Trump could be president again soon. That means one of the quietest figures in Washington actually risked his own position to defend the courts. When someone known for being reserved risks his career to speak out, it signals that something truly serious is happening to the judiciary and democracy. The significance of this moment isn't just that a typically reserved judge cleared his throat, it's that the entire foundation of how the U.S. government functions is flashing a big red warning light. Here's why this is such a big deal. The Supreme Court has always stayed out of political disputes. Their role is to remain above the fray, like that one friend who refuses to get involved in group chat drama. Justices traditionally avoid engaging in direct conflict with presidents because their authority relies on the public believing they are fair and impartial. That self-imposed restraint is what gives their decisions weight, but Trump has been treating judges like contestants on a reality show where he's the host, deciding who stays and who goes. His attacks on the judiciary are not just inappropriate, they are calculated attempts to intimidate the entire judicial branch into submission. When he calls for impeachment over a ruling he dislikes, he is essentially trying to create a judiciary that fears ruling against him, a group of judges who would serve as his personal enforcers. Roberts speaking out is so significant because, as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he holds the highest judicial position in the country. His words carry immense weight. When someone in his position breaks their silence, it's because they see a direct threat to the entire system of government. It's like the calmest person in the room suddenly flipping a table. You know, something serious just happened. Let's be clear about what impeaching a judge actually means. It is not supposed to be a tool for a president's personal grievances. Judges can only be impeached for actual misconduct, things like taking bribes or committing crimes, not for making rulings that a president finds inconvenient. What Trump is suggesting would essentially turn judges into his personal employees, allowing him to fire them at will, completely undermining judicial independence and destroying the separation of powers. And the separation of powers isn't just some abstract concept from a civics class, it's the very reason the US government doesn't operate under a monarchy. By dividing power among three branches, no single person is allowed to control everything. Trump's attacks are attempting to erase that division, sending a message: if you don't rule my way, I will end your career. So here we are, watching one of the most reserved figures in Washington finally take a stand. When someone with a reputation for being mild-mannered and neutral is compelled to speak out, it's a clear sign that we are witnessing an unprecedented challenge to the justice system. While Trump attempts to turn the judiciary into a system where he can fire judges who don't align with him, the rest of the country should be paying close attention. This isn't just political drama, it's a direct threat to how American democracy functions. Even someone as reserved as Roberts is willing to risk speaking out. Maybe it's time for the rest of the country to take this threat seriously.